Hey there, this is James Rosowski from Built Prefab. We've got Keely Watts-Watling and Ian Garrity here. This is our third webinar, and we're happy to have you with us. So I guess just before we get going, please ask questions at any time. I think you just put it in the chat or the Q&A button, and the more the better. It seems to sort of spur thoughts and everything. And then also Keely's going to run a few polls, and we're going to take you through this webinar. So this is the third one. The first two were design, or actually the first one was actually how to choose a property or how to evaluate it for a prefab home. The second one was about how we design the homes and what goes into that. And now we're on to manufacturing and install. And while we were putting this together, it occurred to us that there's actually like a massive amount of content in just this phase. So it's probably going to go pretty quick. And I guess we're going to cover a lot of ground. It's almost as if every one of the pages in this slide could be an entire webinar. But hopefully keep up. And if there's any questions that are unanswered at the end, always just feel free to chime in. And then, of course, you can always contact us after the fact. The previous webinars, you can find them on YouTube. There's our address at Built Prefab 5455, and you can watch those before from before. So our mission is to build the best structures in the world with innovative solutions that reduce waste and improve lives. So we build modular. I'm James Rosowski, the CEO. Ian's the president. Keely does customer care and marketing. And anyway, we're just going to jump right into it. So when you build a prefab home, you got your lot. We've done a design. Really, the next step is practically engineering. And the purpose of the engineering is to make sure your home is going to be suitable for the location it's going. And that's from a structural perspective, and then that we can build it. And I guess we'll do permit plans, which are fairly thin compared to what we might do for production. And so, first off, on an engineering side, if you're building your home on the coast, your house will be engineered for the coast because you're in a seismic zone. So all of a sudden, we're going to add hold downs and things like that. And if you're building your home at the top of a mountain, our engineer is going to specify, bigger lumber and all sorts of other things that we have to do. So just always know that when we build these units, they always are designed for where you're going to put the house. And then also the foundation would be designed for your local terrain and all of that. And I guess we'll go through that. And these details that get done in the engineering, as well as really enhanced drawings that we'll do, that's what's going to be used for your build. And I guess what I've got here is a set of engineered plans. They look like a typical set of engineering. If you had a regular house, regular details. But I think with prefab, when you come to manufacture a building, the difference really lies in your construction drawings. And so a typical set of construction drawings might be 10 or 15 pages or something. But when you go to production, everything must be specified really particularly. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of confusion. So here we've got a 51-page set of production drawings. And when you get into these, basically, we've identified every single thing. There are no selections happening after we press go, put it that way. And so, all the details are here, every light fixture, every switch, all the things, like your handles, appliances, we spec all of that before production starts, which is a little bit different than when you build on site, because I think a lot of times on site, a lot of these decisions are being made on the fly. So yeah, I'm just scrolling through a whole set of plans. And as you can see, it just keeps going on and on, flashing details, insulation. And so, we sort of go overboard with details because it goes pretty quickly in production. And without those kinds of plans, you're not going to, be very successful. So we make these detailed drawings and specifications, particularly for production. And I guess that's sort of the precursor to getting going. And some sort of basic information is when you decide to build in a factory, things are a bit different than when you build on site. And the main difference is that you're building underneath a sort of a blanket certification. And in Canada, those certifications are CSA 8277 or CSA Z240, depending on what type of unit you're building. And in the US, they have similar requirements, but they're determined by state. So how this works is essentially it's like there's an in-house building inspector that comes from a third party, usually Intertech or someone like that, and they're going to inspect the building instead of your local building inspector. So even though this house might have been built, 500 kilometers from wherever you live, there's been an inspector that's inspected it, framing, mechanical, plumbing, electrical, building envelope, all the same things they would check at site, except it happened in a plant. And so in addition to that, every plant has to have a QC manager, a set of policies, and then, they have these inspections or, along the way. And then once the house is finished, before it leaves the factory, you're going to end up with a label on the house somewhere that says, this house is 8277, it's been inspected. And then essentially when it arrives to site, it now has sort of met a criteria for being built outside of the building code. It's like an exception. It says 8277, as long as it bears the label, the building inspector doesn't need to inspect this home. And so you install it, and essentially, as far as the modules go, they're not going to do their typical inspections because this thing's arriving finished. What they'll do is they're going to look at, obviously the foundation and the way that was built, and then safety type inspections as to whether or not, you need handrails on stairs and various other items like that. So, yeah, and we're going to take you through a whole bunch of photos. And I guess, one of the most frequently asked questions we get about these units is how much of them is actually built in the plant. And I mean, we'll show you pictures, but when we do a house in a plant, our objective is to do as much as possible in the plant, because if you don't really get a lot done there, you sort of you're not gaining the advantage of modular. So we're doing all the siding, all the windows and doors, flooring and tile, millwork, countertops, plumbing, lighting fixtures, drywall, paint, fireplaces, you name it, everything's in there. And once the unit's ready, we prep it for shipping. So we've got our first question about what's your experience been with inspections in the US when the house arrives on site? And so the US is kind of different than Canada in that those two inspections, the 8277 and Z240, they apply to all of Canada. So we use the same label, but in the United States, every single state is different. So, I mean, but as far as, inspections go, we still haven't had any issues because, again, those units are bearing a label in the same way that they do in Canada. So we've had houses go to Montana, Idaho, Wyoming. Is that it? We got one going to California, but it's not there yet. So we haven't had any issues. We did Washington previously.
Yeah, it's a process, and you follow the process.
Yeah, and the inspectors, again, these plans are submitted to the local permitting jurisdiction before we start building anyway. So they get a look at it. They look at all the engineering. And usually, actually, in the U.S., it's even more stringent because there'll be a state authority, and then on you go. So she says thanks. So I think she means stop. You've answered the question. That's enough. Yeah. So I mean, here's some pictures of plant production because you know, just to show you. So basically you've got a frame, we're insulating the rims. There's TGI joists that we use every time. And then, you know, 3/4 inch sheathing. The unit gets framed up just like any other house you'd see, except, you know, the difference is there's no foundation. So, you know, insulation, we have a couple ways we do it. So this is a traditional style insulation where it's in the walls, and you know we're doing that. Here's a traditional style building where you've got a house wrap, and they've already installed, you know, the door frames and the window frames and that in Tyvek. This is an example of a net zero house where it's essentially wrapped in a plastic, you know, to create an airtight building. And with one of those, we put all the insulation on the outside. But you can kind of see the process here. If this house was being built on site or in a plant, it would really look the same. Just the beauty of the plant is that, you know, they can come to work and turn the lights on even when it's dark out in the summer, sort of get going at 7, and you know it's never rainy, and it never you never have any wind or people stealing your tools. Houses are drywalled just like normal. We got some pictures of flooring and tile. So here's a unit with Schluter going down, as well as the heat wire, and you know some pictures of flooring in, finished flooring, tile. Like this is a unit before it's shipped. You can see the tiles completely installed. There's a millwork being installed in a home. More tile, more millwork. So essentially, it's just like building a regular house. Here's a unit that's essentially ready to go. And you can see all the siding is on, all the windows are in, everything's in there, drywall, fans, lighting. You know, basically you could live in this house if it was on a foundation. And that's basically, that's where you get the most value out of modular construction, in that all of this work that would have happened at your location is now, you know, being shipped into the site and being, you know, installed there. So we've got a question, which is, can you have longer overhangs? And the answer is yes. I mean, there's actually many ways to do overhangs. You know, like this unit is a single unit. It's only got 2-foot overhangs all the way around. But as a couple examples, I'm going to grab some pictures possibly. Yeah, like if we can fix
that 1-foot overhangs all the way around, and what you're seeing in that photo there, right?
Those 1 foot.
2-foot overhangs is standard on a number of our units, and then there are options for additional, as James is saying.
Yeah, like this unit here, you can't actually see this that well, but it's actually 10 feet to the back wall. And then, of course, like we've done projects where we've added, like for instance, this project here, a large overhang was added after the fact on site. And I guess if it's important, yeah, this is a 2-foot overhang house. So it just depends, you know, what you're looking for, but there are modifications that can be made to the unit.
And
yeah,
like, the driving factor in design is the ability to build in the factory, shipped on the highway to your site. So those are the limitations. It's not like we can just make it as wide as possible, working within those maximums.
Yeah, and that's the truth. So, you know, like this unit here, you're looking at, it's only 14.5 feet wide with 1-foot overhang. So a lot of times we put 2 of those together, or we do 16s with no overhangs, and that's really driven by your, you know, your shipping routes and things like that. So, you know, in the design process, we could talk about it and see, you know, what it is you're looking for and go from there. Yeah, so this little unit, there's the little kitchen, and that's getting ready to go down the highway. So like all the appliances are taped up, and we've got bracing in there so it doesn't slide away. But the point is like, this is the level of finish that you're getting when it shows up. You know, we shrink wrap the outside of the house. Typically, if it's not going very far, sometimes we won't do it, but you know, that's ready to go down pretty far trip down the highway with shrink wrap. And then, you know, that sort of takes us, like, as far as manufacturing goes, I guess the only other things I might say about it is that while we're going through manufacturing, you know, with customers, we're always in touch. We're sending photos of production, like basically regularly, so you can follow along and see what's happening with your home. I mean, basically, you know, more than, yeah, close to once a day, sometimes, you know, once a week, depending on how fast the production is going. But, you know, we want you to be involved and to understand what the process looks like. And so that's what we do. And then skipping to the second part of this discussion, we get into site work and install. So while that is all happening, you know, depending on the timing of your project, the site work is going to be occurring. And a lot of times what we like to do is build the unit over winter. Spring comes, dig a hole, put in your house, and then, you know, you'll be in it fairly quickly. Other times, you know, we may finish the foundation before the unit gets going. It just really is depending on what everybody's timing is, how long permitting takes, various, you know, other considerations. But the point is, in a best case scenario, you kind of overlap them, or what, you know, the unit is ready and then you bring it into the foundation and all of a sudden you've sped up your process like significantly, where, you know, typically you dig a hole, put in your foundation, and then start framing. Well, in this situation, instead of starting framing, you could bring in an entire house and finish it off quite quickly. So, I mean, as far as site work goes, though, it's just like a regular house. We'll have all the plans together, and maybe you're doing a crawl space or a basement. And, you know, I've got some pictures, like we're going to excavate just like a regular house. This one's showing us bringing in the services to the place. This is actually, we did it after the unit was there just for timing reasons. But I mean, just like any other house, you're going to bring in your services. And then, you know, like this is an example of a crawl space foundation that was made for a, say, 1,200 square foot house. And I mean, this is a great example because I'm going to say they did the foundation in the fall and the unit got started in the fall. And we actually shipped the unit maybe by January. The foundation was ready. And I would say the owners were like in the house probably by the beginning of March, right? Or mid-March, something around there, and they're living in it. So I guess, you know, the speed of which that's occurring is quite high. Like if you think by January they had the foundation ready, but they were living in the house, you know, in mid-March, that would never be possible with a traditional build, because you know, basically you finish your foundation, now you're into framing the house. Well, we brought it in there and it was done. Shipping, they always go on a truck and we take them down the highway. I guess just like Ian said, a lot of the shipping is a bit determined by widths and all that. So every time we do a project, we're going to check to see what the shipping route looks like and what kind of building we can send on the road. And then we've done, you know, other things like this for, say, island projects where we barged units right to the island. And, you know, right on this unit, there's a couple trucks and a barge, and back there is a crane. So you can, you know, kind of bring all that to wherever you are. Yeah, and so, you know, more photos. Here's a unit being craned into site, and it's fairly straightforward. I mean, essentially, you've got your large boxes sitting on the truck, and the crane operator rigs the unit for lift, and we'll lift it right onto the foundation. And I mean, I guess, you know, sort of the last part of this is the installation. So, you know, this unit arrives, and it's, you know, it's practically like this, except, you know, right here is a line where there were two modules that came together. And so on the floor here as well, there's a line and the wall. And so when they arrived, essentially we left part of the drywall off, part of the flooring off. And then of course, once the unit is there, we do all that patchwork. And, you know, you can see, like, obviously the lights are on. Well, all the electrical, everything, your panels and everything are there, but we get guys to do all your electrical hookups, mechanical finish, and plumbing finish as well. And, you know, essentially, once the house is finished, you can't, you know, obviously tell it was built in a factory. It just so happens that, you know, that's the method we used. And I'm getting a question here. So somebody's got a lot in a park, and the developer said the lot is serviced with sanitary and domestic water. Is there anything else that needs to be done, or is it a matter of placing the home on the lot? And I mean, in this case, I think the answer for you is probably is that it is that simple. If you already have sanitary and you have water, you're basically 2/3 of the way there. The last thing is to know what your electrical is. because of course the units require power, and we would have to determine, if you have enough power to service the unit itself. But that is a best case scenario, that you've got all your services there. Where I showed this one, it was not best case scenario. All the services had to be brought in. So yeah, and if we go on, I think we show some more pictures of finished houses. We've got exteriors also complete. At the end of the project, that's where you'll finish off your garages and decks, all of that type of stuff. And there's some more pictures of finished houses. I guess, at the end of the day, the main thing is that two things are happening at once. Whereas when you build on site, one thing is happening at a time. You're going to go chronologically through your build from foundation all the way through framing into completion. But with this modular construction, you have this situation where foundation is proceeding, so are the buildings, and then of course you're bringing them in and installing them, and obviously that can expedite the process substantially. And yeah, I don't know, Ian, what else do we have to add?
If you just scroll back to the framing one, James, I know that's a little ways back, and I'll say while I'm answering or providing this piece of information, now would be the time to go in that Q&A tab there and send in any questions and answer any poll information that Keely put in there. But in the first slide, in the framing slide, just one thing to mention was James was talking about how we frame the buildings. One more, please, James. I just wanted to point out there that we've got a double rim joist, which is pretty standard, and we've even done triple. So sometimes we get questions on the front end of projects like basically about the quality of the homes, but also just talking about how they hold up for high snow loads or how they hold up when they're being shipped down the highway. So there are certain structural framing details that the engineer specifies, as James alluded to in the beginning of the conversation, that are sort of like above and beyond, I guess, what you might otherwise see, because we're going to be shipping and craning these homes, putting them in high snow load areas, things like that, that the framing is sort of like, yeah, above and beyond the building code, I guess you'd call it. So just a little detail about the quality of homes, the structural integrity of the homes. They're individual structural modules. So if it's 2, 3, 4 modules that combined make up one cohesive home, that all of those individual modules are structurally independent. So obviously, when you put them all together, they're just forming a stronger finished product.
Yeah, and I think actually, I mean, it's the double rim joist is a lot. Like a lot of like a traditionally built home will not have a double rim joist. It's going to be probably single, and most modular homes are not even going to use LVL rim joists like this. And we just find it's better for craning. Like it costs a little bit more, but at the same time, once we get to craning them up, if you've got more substantial framing there, they're going to be more durable. So how much, somebody's asked, how much space on site does the crane require? Ian, tell us the numbers that we just had there on that one.
Yeah,
project.
we literally just went through this with a project. All cranes are different depending on the size. It also depends on how close you can get to the foundation. But the one we just did recently is about 28 by 40. The crane has outriggers that sort of sprawl out and give balance, give stability to the crane. I think that the crane pad size could be bigger or smaller, depending on the size of the home, proximity that the crane can get to the foundation, which means how large the crane size is typically. Bigger crane, bigger footprint, etc.
Yeah, and so the answer is that's a pretty small crane, a 24 by 40 size. But yeah, if you've got big units and they have to get craned further, then we have to have bigger cranes. So it's really relative, but yeah, that's one of them. Somebody else has asked a question about whether or not the units can be stacked, and I'm going to grab some pictures here. I've got of a unit that's stacked. So for instance, here's we built 3 of these for someone in Montana, and they built down here as an ICF foundation with 2 units stacked on top of each other. So definitely we would do that in the design process. So anyhow, also we've got a question here about fire resistance, and the question is, are there options to make a house more fire resistant? And yes, definitely. I guess, our typical designs, like this one has wood on it. So obviously wood is flammable. It's not your best fireproof material. But what are some options are, like, first off, we do a lot of corrugated metal, not flammable. All the roofing materials are class 1 fire retardant. But as far as siding goes, if you want to have that look of siding, but be, fire conscious, I guess, we can do metal siding, like that pictures that's right behind Ian, that orange or brownish color on the other side, that one, yeah. That's actually an architectural steel product that is non-flammable. In fact, I could just show you a couple pictures of that one. That unit is in an area that I guess is fire conscious. So we've got the architectural steel metal that looks like wood in order to keep that aesthetic. And then also we utilized I could show a couple pictures in here. These large architectural panels, which are essentially concrete, so they're not going to you're not going to have fire issues with those. So yes, there's definitely ways, and we've even been looking into the whole exterior sprinkler system lately.
Yeah, and James mentioned this house. This behind me here is just showing you photos. That developer had specific roofing requirements because it wasn't a very high fire zone location. And so they wanted a steel roof. And sometimes people ask us about that. For our low slope roofs, a steel roof is not always the best option. So as James said, the roofing material that we do use, which is the most appropriate for our low slope roofs, has basically the same 1-to-1 fire rating that steel roofs do typically. So yeah, the exterior siding and the roofing are class 1 fire rated. Yeah.
So, I mean, we didn't get a ton of questions, but we do appreciate the ones we did get, and we hope you filled out the polls. So for now, I mean, that's the essence of the discussion, and I guess at the end of the day, the site work component is the most sort of tricky for any build. It's just always, everybody's got a different situation. So, depending on your lot, it's important to sort of have a discussion around what it is you want to achieve, and what's possible, and what's not going to break your budget. And then the units themselves, actually, for us, that's kind of the easy part because they're very repetitious. So, I mean, our webinars are on our YouTube channel, and if you'd like to watch those, take a look. And otherwise, we'll post this one after, and we'll be having some more. So we really appreciate you taking time to come and watch. Feel free to email us if you have any other questions. Talk to you soon. Bye.